Frank, aka the Frank. You must be buzzing.
Can you smell that?
No, what is that?
It smells of victory again, Laurie. The victory smell is back. The Arsenal's back. The Premier League's back. No more international breaks for I think about 4 months. Just all Arsenal, and what a way to kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I mean, the pressure was on today, even though, we were grateful that City and Liverpool dropping points meant that if we was able to beat Brentford today, we would go top of the table. And got to say, it wasn't our best performance, wasn't our most fluent, as we've been saying many times this season. However, we did what most title teams, winning teams do, is that you get a win on not your best day. So I think it's fair to say it went well.
No, absolutely. And I can't, like you said, especially with the early kickoff, I think I said it during the starting 11 show, it definitely put a lot of pressure on the team today. I thought we were awful. I'll be honest with you. I thought we were awful. There was barely any end product until Kai Havertz came on, and I'm sure we'll get onto in a moment. But this is what you're saying, sign of champions. I'm not saying we're going to win it, but that's what you do, when you're not playing at your best. If you can still carve out a result, you're definitely going some way towards that Premier League trophy. And I think we may get there this season, Laurie. We might do it.
Well, you know what? You've gone there, so let's talk about it. When the first 11 came out, I think you were part of our starting 11 show, and I think to a man, we were happy with that lineup.
Yeah.
And obviously Havertz was left out of that lineup. And I was saying, and I think you agreed with me, that playing Trossard in there seemed like a good look. Trossard been on a good run of goal scoring form recently. And we thought that him being in there would be able to get forward and maybe help the attackers and give us a bit more fluency. But to all intents and purposes, it didn't quite work out. Havertz, who was left on the bench, comes on, makes an immediate impact in terms of his willingness to get up and down and put himself about. And then he pops up with that goal in the 89th minute, which turns out to be the winner. So,
of course, someone I've always rated. I'm sure that will come back to bite me. But listen, I stick by it. Obviously, I thought the lineup was fantastic when we saw it. Obviously, Trossard didn't necessarily work out in that position, but I think in theory it was a good idea. And I think it's probably something that we're going to see a lot more in the future now that he's given it a go. And with the Kai Havertz thing as well, it's great. And obviously, I've been very quick to give him stick that he's probably deserved so far. So I will come forward and I will say I think he played very well today when he came off the bench. But I think with this now, it's going to be a similar situation to the issue that I have with Eddie Nketiah. It's fantastic that you've done this now. Now go and do it for the next 3 games. You know what?
You're so right about that. I mean, because, listen, we do criticise, but we also give the players plenty of praise as well.
This is what I'm saying.
And like me, I'm sure you're very happy for Havertz.
Of course.
But you are right to say, listen, okay, you've done well today, but we want to see more. Much like what we said about Eddie. And if you remember seasons previous, you said that about Pepe as well, didn't you?
No, absolutely.
Because he had moments when he did some really good things, but we want to see it on a consistent basis, right?
Absolutely. And I said it during the watch along as well. Kai Havertz is the only player that's played every single game so far for us this season. And up to this point, it's been very hard to try and justify how he's managed to get into that position. So if we could just see it even just a little bit more regularly, and obviously, price tag, he can't help his price tag, and it probably puts a lot of pressure on him, absolutely. But if he plays like that the way he did today, because it wasn't just the goal. When he came on, he actually looked fairly decent. So if we could just get a little bit more of that, I'm sure Arsenal fans will slowly come around to him.
Do you think that maybe in the future it'll be more of what they call an impact player? Meaning that he might not start a lot of games, but
I mean,
they'll be hoping that when he comes on, he can give the necessary impact.
It's a pretty expensive impact. It's a pretty expensive impact player. But look, it depends. Obviously, we spoke about it before the game as well. Like, there were certain players that we'd prefer to see coming off the bench. I think we all as a collective agreed that, for example, the likes of Tomiyasu, if we was to choose between him and Zinchenko at left-back position, we'd much rather see Tomiyasu coming off the bench, as he's more effective coming off the bench. I said the same thing about the Jesus and Trossard situation. I would have rather have started Jesus today, because I think that Trossard was the better player coming off the bench. Obviously, they both started in the end, and so the same thing with Zinchenko and Tomiyasu. But my point still stands, And if that is going to be the way, it's probably worth a try. He's started a majority of games, Kai Havertz, and maybe it is time, it's worked today. Maybe it's time we try him as that impact player. Don't get me wrong. I still want to see him put in better performances in a starting position, considering how much we have paid for him. But we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we all know, as you've seen Frank on this several times before, he's a goalkeeper, and he knows his little thing about goalkeepers. So you know where I'm going with this. Aaron Ramsdale, sum up today's performance for Aaron Ramsdale.
I mean, he kept a clean sheet. And that's ultimately your job as a goalkeeper, to not concede goals. And he did exactly that. Obviously, very obvious that he only played because Raya wasn't eligible for the game. I'm sure if Arteta could, he would have found a way to play David Raya today. So he probably only started the game because of that. And yes, he made the mistakes. And I think people have been a bit harsh on him. Don't get me wrong, they're terrible mistakes. But it's not nothing. It's not.
Didn't lead to any goals.
They didn't lead to any goals, and it's not anything that we haven't seen from David Raya over the past 4 or 5 games. So I think people were very quick to jump on Aaron Ramsdale there. During the half-time show, people were going crazy. People were saying, sell him to Chelsea.
Wow.
Why do we want to do that? You know, it's probably the first round of mistakes that he's made this season. Obviously, he's had limited game time this season. I think since Raya came in, he's only played 3 games. And there was the questionable, was it his fault or not, the goal against West Ham? But apart from that, he hasn't done anything wrong. So don't get me wrong. While the mistakes are bad, they're poor mistakes, don't get me wrong. They probably should have scored for him. If it wasn't for the likes of Declan Rice, etc., then they probably would have scored for them. But didn't concede a goal. So
I think the problem with the mistakes is they're all the more highlighted by the fact that we've got a situation at Arsenal where you've got 2 top goalkeepers competing for the one spot. And he was brought in today, like you said, with Raya not being able to play because of the loan deal.
Yeah.
So all the attention was on him. Well, certainly a lot of attention was on him. And then he made 2 very, how can I put it, unforced errors, which didn't cast him in the best possible light.
But for me, that comes from confidence, and this is why I've been very critical of Mikel Arteta in this situation. You know, when you brought Raya in, you said you've got 2 number 1 goalkeepers, and everything you've done since that point indicates the complete opposite. And it wouldn't surprise me if Ramsdale is completely shot of confidence, because it's not an ability issue. We've seen that over the last 2 years. He's a fantastic goalkeeper. So I think the errors that he's making comes from a lack of confidence.
Yeah. Okay, listen, everything you said there, I pretty much agree with. And I do think that the fact that he's been put in that situation, it probably has affected his confidence. There's no doubt about it. I think the same could probably be said for Raya as well, to be fair.
Of course, yeah.
But let's end on a more positive note. Declan Rice, and I know you're a big fan of Declan Rice.
I've got to keep saying it.
Yeah, and again, another man of the match performance. Again. I'm running out of superlatives for Declan Rice this season.
They need to expand the dictionary at this point.
But yeah, I mean, to cut it short, he was outstanding. Your take on it?
No, absolutely. And you know, since he's come in, maybe despite the West Ham game where it was a pretty hostile environment, he didn't start the game. It took him a while to get into it. He hasn't put a foot wrong. For me, he's the first ever £100 million bargain. That's the way I like to put him. That's the way I like to put it. I genuinely believe, and that's probably being a little bit sarcastic, obviously, but if you put him in a midfield on his own, I feel like he could quite comfortably do that because he genuinely, it feels like 3 midfielders tied into one. He can do everything that he needs to in that midfield position, and I think it's an absolute steal from West Ham.
Okay, there you have it. Declan Rice, Ballon d'Or, yeah?
Ballon d'Or. One day, we'll get there. Saka first.
Okay, right.